The obsidian walls of the grand conclave chamber absorbed the flickering glow of the central holographic projector, casting long, distorted shadows across the tiered platforms where the high counselors of the Xylosian Imperium sat, their crystalline eyes reflecting the pulsating red star that represented the newly designated humanity sector. The air, usually crisp with synthesized ozone, was thick with the scent of anxiety, a metallic tang that permeated the chamber, clinging to the polished surfaces and the furred carapaces of the Cathar delegates who fidgeted on their lower perches. Above them, the serene, almost petrified faces of the Xylosians remained impassive, betraying nothing of the internal turmoil that gripped their collective mind. High Counselor Varus, whose multifaceted eyes had witnessed the rise and fall of countless minor species across cycles, tapped a clawed digit against the armrest of his elevated throne. The subtle click echoed in the preternatural silence, a sound magnified by the tension that had steadily accumulated over the last 12 cycles, since the first, faint energy signature had been detected emanating from the uncharted regions of the Perseus arm. This was not merely an expansionist probe. The readings had been clear, disquietingly robust, suggesting a species capable of interstellar travel. Yet their methodology, their trajectory, their very existence defied all known protocols of galactic engagement. The data remains inconclusive, Varus's voice, a resonant hum that vibrated through the chamber's acoustic dampeners, cut through the quiet. His gaze swept across the assembled representatives, lingering briefly on the fidgeting Cathar, then moving to the stoic, crystalline forms of the Etherians, who, as always, maintained an almost spectral presence, their internal light sources barely visible beneath their translucent cloaks. Their vessels, as depicted here, he gestured with a graceful sweep of his hand, and the holographic projection shifted, displaying a schematic of a typical human scout ship, rendered in stark, unsettling detail. It was small, compact, almost crude by Xylosian standards, lacking the elegant, organic curves that defined most advanced starcraft. They possess a distinct lack of advanced shielding technology, their propulsion systems appear rudimentary, and their sensor arrays inefficient. Yet their deep space probes exhibit an astonishing resilience against stellar radiation and micrometeoroid impacts, far exceeding the projected capabilities of their visible energy output. The Cathar delegate, Thrawn, a creature of restless energy and sharp, predatory instincts, finally broke his silence. High Counselor, with all due respect to the meticulous efforts of the Xylosian Inquest Division, these humans are an anomaly. They do not conform to any established evolutionary model for emergent species. Their resource allocation appears illogical. They pour vast amounts of energy and materials into what appears to be localized defense rather than expansionary ventures. Their initial deep space probes were, by all accounts, simple, almost laughably so, yet they were precisely where they needed to be to detect our exploratory beacon. A coincidence? Or a deliberate act of obfuscation? Thrawn's tail flicked nervously, a gesture of deep unease in Cathar culture. My people believe caution is paramount. Their technology, while seemingly inferior, exhibits characteristics that defy conventional analysis. It is almost as if they are designed to be overlooked. A ripple of murmuring went through the lower tiers of the chamber. The notion that a species would deliberately appear less capable than they were was anathema to most galactic civilizations, who prided themselves on displaying their technological prowess. The Xylosians, masters of subtle manipulation and strategic misdirection, understood the concept, but the scale implied by this humanity was unsettling. Deliberately projecting weakness on an interstellar scale implied either a profound paranoia or a strategic brilliance that bordered on the terrifying. From the Etherian tier, a soft, harmonious chime resonated. It was the only sound the Etherians ever made, a form of non-verbal communication that conveyed complex ideas through precise vibrational frequencies. This chime, however, was laced with an unusual dissonance, indicating a profound disagreement. Etherian speaker Xylos, a being of pure thought given form through crystalline energy, projected a mental image directly into Varus's mind. A vast, swirling nebula within which a single, impossibly small vessel navigated with an inexplicable grace, unaffected by the gravitational eddies that would tear apart larger, more robust ships. The image dissolved, replaced by a single, stark question. Are we misinterpreting fragility as design? Varus considered the Etherians' query. It was a salient point, one that gnawed at the edge. Ease of Xylosian understanding. Their models, built upon millennia of observing countless species, always assumed a linear progression, crude tools to advanced engines, simple ships to formidable fleets. Humanity's trajectory seemed to be an erratic scatter graph, with inexplicable peaks of resilience in unexpected areas, while remaining seemingly underdeveloped in others. Their propulsion, for instance, was undeniably primitive by galactic standards, a conventional reaction drive that produced exhaust plumes visible for light years, making them easy to track. Yet, their ships, even the smallest scout craft, could sustain impacts that would cripple Xylosian frigates, and their life support systems operated for cycles on energy reserves that should, by all calculations, be depleted in a matter of months. Our long-range probes have finally established a more stable observation perimeter around their designated home system, Varus announced, shifting the holographic display. A pale blue star shimmered into view, orbited by several planets. One, a verdant sphere of swirling blues and greens, was highlighted. This is Sol III, their primary world. Scans indicate a thriving biosphere, high population density, and a level of technological saturation consistent with a Type II civilization attempting to transition to Type III. They possess rudimentary orbital defenses, ground-based energy weapons, and a widespread network of communications satellites, all of which, High Counselors, are easily circumvented by our current fleet capabilities. Thrawn scoffed, a dry, rattling sound. And yet, High Counselor, for all their apparent weakness, they have managed to evade our direct detection for over 7 cycles within their own system. Their vessels, while slow, exhibit sudden, inexplicable bursts of evasive maneuverability that defy prediction models. Our most advanced tracking algorithms classify them as unpredictable variables, a designation usually reserved for rogue asteroids or nebular anomalies, not sentient species with consistent patterns of behavior. Indeed, Varus conceded, his gaze fixed on the holographic Sol III, a planet brimming with unseen life, unknown potential. It is the very inconsistency that vexes the Conclave. Their initial deep space probes, those fragile, almost derelict vessels that first registered on our periphery, were remarkably resilient. They endured radiation fields that would melt an alloy 3 times their tensile strength. They operated with a negligible energy signature for decades, drifting through interstellar space, seemingly without purpose, yet precisely positioned to detect our exploratory probes when they finally arrived. He paused, allowing the gravity of his statement to settle. It suggests a deliberate design choice, a strategy of extreme endurance over overt power, a ship so weak yet so impossibly persistent. Another Cathar delegate, Xylos, smaller and more cautious than Thrawn, spoke with a nervous tremble in his vocalizers. We have observed their internal conflicts, their tribal disputes, their wars. They are a species seemingly perpetually at odds with itself, consuming its own resources in destructive cycles. Their history is replete with self-inflicted wounds. How can such a species, so prone to self-sabotage, pose any coherent threat to the stability of the Imperium? Their ships are extensions of their chaotic nature, strong in some areas, catastrophically weak in others. Varus's internal processors whirred, analyzing the Cathar's observation. It was a common misconception among species who prioritized collective harmony and resource optimization. The Xylosian Imperium, having achieved a profound, almost symbiotic unity, often struggled to comprehend species defined by internal friction. Yet Varus had studied the historical archives of many ascended species, and a disturbing pattern had sometimes emerged. Those who wrestled with internal strife often developed an unparalleled resilience, an adaptability born from constant challenge. Their internal conflicts, while seemingly wasteful, have forged a species with an unparalleled capacity for innovation under duress, Varus countered, his voice steady. Their scientific advancements, particularly in material science and energy retention, are not linear. They experience sudden, almost explosive leaps in understanding, often in direct response to existential threats, both internal and external. Their initial scout ships, those weak vessels, were not truly weak. They were optimized for survival in the harshest environments with minimal resources. They were a testament to their engineers' ability to wring every last joule of efficiency from meager components. It is a philosophy fundamentally different from our own, which prioritizes brute force and overwhelming projection of power. The Etherian chime resonated again, this time with a note of solemn warning. Their perceived fragility is a veil, Thay. Our resourcefulness a weapon. The chamber was silent for a long moment, the weight of the Etherian's pronouncement hanging heavy. The possibility that humanity's apparent technological backwardness was a deliberate, strategic facade was a terrifying prospect. It suggested a level of sophisticated deception that the Zalosian Imperium, for all its millennia of strategic dominance, had rarely encountered. Most species, when faced with a superior civilization, either fled, capitulated, or openly challenged. To present a false image of frailty, to lure an unsuspecting empire into a miscalculation, was an act of profound cunning. "We have detected increased activity around Sol III," Varus continued, adjusting the projection to show a magnified view of the planet's orbital space. Dozens of small, fast-moving craft, barely larger than their deep space probes, darted around a larger, ring-like structure that was slowly being assembled in orbit. Their construction efforts have accelerated in the last 2 cycles. These are not merely defensive satellites. Our analysts believe they are components of a larger interconnected system. A system designed to augment, or perhaps even transform, their seemingly weak vessels. Thrawn's multiple eyes narrowed. Transform? How can a species with such inefficient propulsion and rudimentary energy generation transform anything into a threat? Their ships are still lumbering targets for our cruisers. We could dispatch a single scouting fleet, High Counselor, and wipe out their orbital defenses within a standard cycle. End this uncertainty. End this enigma. Varus held Thrawn's gaze, his own crystalline eyes unwavering. And if their perceived weakness is a calculated lure, if their rudimentary defenses are but the outer layer of something far more complex, we have seen what their engineers can achieve with limited resources, focusing on resilience and efficiency. What if they have now applied that same ingenuity, that same philosophy of unexpected optimization to warfare itself? He paused, his voice dropping to a low, guttural hum that resonated with ancient wisdom. What if a ship designed to be weak, but perfected for survival against overwhelming odds, is not weak at all? What if it is merely waiting for the right moment, and the right components to become something else entirely? The tension in the chamber solidified, becoming palpable, a living entity that pressed down on every delegate. The red star of the humanity sector pulsed, a baleful beacon of the unknown. The Zalosian Imperium, for the first time in centuries, felt the cold prickle of genuine apprehension. They had encountered formidable foes, vast empires, and terrifying bioweapons. But they had never encountered a species that so profoundly defied their expectations, a species whose greatest strength might be its ability to appear utterly inconsequential, until the moment it was too late. The mystery of humanity, its quiet resilience, its enigmatic progression, had become a shadow, lengthening over the heart of the Imperium. The Conclave's deliberations stretched over several more cycles, marked by increasing frustration and deepening unease. The Zalosian Inquest Division continued to beam back observations of humanity's home system, Sol, and the burgeoning orbital structures around Sol III. The activity was relentless, methodical, yet still maddeningly opaque. The humans were constructing something, certainly, but its purpose remained elusive. Their energy signatures remained low, their ship designs still appeared simplistic, almost fragile. Yet the Etherians' warning resonated louder with each passing cycle. Finally, the Imperium dispatched a diplomatic envoy. Not a war fleet, nor a covert infiltration unit, but a single, unarmed Zalosian diplomatic cruiser, the Etha's Whisper, equipped with universal translation protocols and a suite of advanced long-range communication arrays. The decision, spearheaded by Varus, was born of a growing suspicion that humanity was not only capable of deception, but might also be operating on a fundamentally different set of ethical and strategic principles than the rest of the galaxy. An open display of force, he argued, might trigger an unpredictable and potentially catastrophic response from a species that had already demonstrated an uncanny ability to survive against perceived overwhelming odds. The Etha's Whisper arrived at the edge of the Sol system's outer asteroid belt after a journey of nearly 2 cycles. Its arrival was met with silence. No warning shots, no aggressive maneuvers from the sparse human patrol craft, just observation. The human vessels, small and ungainly by Zalosian standards, maintained a respectful distance, their sensor arrays passively sweeping the diplomatic cruiser. Their communication attempts initially were tentative, almost hesitant. Then a voice. It was clear, resonant, and transmitted directly into the Etha's Whisper's PR. Imari communication channel, instantly translated into High Zalosian. There was no static, no distortion, only an almost startling clarity. Greetings, vessel designated Etha's whisper. We are humanity. You have entered our system's outer protective zone. Please state your intentions. The Zalosian emissary, Ambassador Kale, a being whose diplomatic career spanned centuries, felt a faint tremor of surprise. The directness of the communication, the lack of pretense, was unusual. Most emergent species, when encountering a vessel of the Imperium, would either prostrate themselves with effusive greetings or launch an immediate, desperate attack. Humanity simply asked for intentions. "Greetings, humanity," Kale responded, his voice modulated to convey profound respect and authority, as was Zalosian protocol. "We are Ambassador Kale of the Zalosian Imperium. Our intentions are peaceful. We seek dialogue. We have observed your civilization's growth with interest and wish to establish formal diplomatic relations and exchange knowledge." There was a brief pause, a microcycle of silence that felt impossibly long to Kale. Then the human voice returned, still calm, still direct. "Your presence here, Ambassador, indicates a level of technological advancement that would have allowed you to observe us without direct contact for an indefinite period. We acknowledge your declaration of peaceful intent. We, too, seek dialogue and the exchange of knowledge. Please maintain your current trajectory and speed. A designated intercept vessel will guide you to our primary orbital diplomatic station. Be advised, we will be conducting passive scans of your vessel for identification and safety protocols." Kale felt a flicker of something akin to admiration. They had immediately identified the strategic implication of the Zalosian presence, the fact that they could have remained hidden. It showed a sharp, analytical mind, unafraid to call out a subtle power play. And the request for passive scans was not a demand, but an advisement, delivered with a tone of mutual respect for security. This was not the chaotic, unpredictable species the Cathar had described. A short time later, a human ship, larger than the scout craft but still strikingly unassuming in its design, approached. It was a blocky, utilitarian vessel, its hull scarred with the marks of re-entry and deep space travel. It was, Kale realized with a chilling clarity, exactly like the scout ships Varys had described, outwardly weak, but possessing an indefinable, almost stubborn resilience. It felt personal somehow, like a challenge. The diplomatic station, as they approached, was equally pragmatic. A sprawling, modular structure of interlocking panels and visible conduits, it orbited Sol III like a metallic blossom. It lacked the elegant, sweeping aesthetics of Zalosian orbital constructs, yet it exuded an aura of immense functionality, of purpose-built efficiency. It was clear that every component served a vital role, that nothing was superfluous. Upon docking, Ambassador Kale and his delegation were met by a human delegation. They were a diverse species, varying in skin tone, stature, and facial features, yet unified by a shared, calm demeanor. Their clothing was simple, almost devoid of ornamentation, but practical and well-maintained. The lead human, a female with eyes that held a surprising depth of intellect, extended a hand in a gesture of greeting, a gesture that, Kale's universal translator informed him, was a sign of trust and welcome in human culture. "Welcome, Ambassador Kale, to humanity's orbital platform. I am Director Anya Sharma, head of the Department of Interspecies Relations." Her voice was quiet, yet carried an unmistakable authority. "We apologize for the initial caution. Our history has taught us the value of prudence when encountering the unknown." Kale returned the gesture, his clawed digit lightly touching her palm, a movement he had practiced in preparation. "We understand, Director Sharma. Our own history has similar lessons. We appreciate your gracious welcome." The initial diplomatic exchanges were an exercise in mutual respect and subtle probing. Kale presented the Imperium's offer of knowledge exchange, emphasizing the Zalosians' vast archives and advanced technological understanding. Sharma listened intently, her gaze unwavering, absorbing every nuance. When it was her turn to speak, she did so with a quiet confidence that belied humanity's relatively young interstellar presence. "Ambassador, we are grateful for your offer. Humanity values knowledge above all else. However, we must be frank. While we appreciate your willingness to share, our approach to technological development and scientific understanding is perhaps divergent from your own." She gestured towards a panoramic viewport that looked out upon Sol III, a sapphire jewel cradled in the void. "We have always been a species of necessity. Our advancements are often born from adversity, from the need to overcome immediate challenges with the resources available to us. We do not possess the vast, stable resource networks or the millennia of uninterrupted research that your Imperium commands. Our ships, as you have undoubtedly observed, reflect this philosophy. They are built for resilience, for endurance, for making the absolute most of what we have. Kale felt a thrill of understanding, a sudden, chilling realization. This was not humility, it was a statement of profound philosophical difference. You speak of making the most of what you have, Kale observed, his voice carefully neutral. Yet your deep space probes exhibited an almost unbelievable capacity for self-sustenance and environmental resistance. Your orbital structures around Sol III appear to be under continuous development, despite the conservative energy signatures. These are not the hallmarks of a limited species, Director. Sharma smiled, a small, knowing upturn of her lips. Indeed, Ambassador. Necessity, as we say, is the mother of invention. When your ships must traverse vast, unexplored distances with limited fuel and resources, when every component must withstand unimaginable stresses, you learn to engineer for resilience. When you are a species that has frequently come close to self-annihilation, you learn to adapt, to innovate, to make the impossible merely improbable. Our probes, for instance, were designed with a unique form of self-repairing nanite lattice and a revolutionary energy harvesting system that can draw microscopic amounts of power from the quantum foam itself. It is not an advanced system in the traditional sense of high power output, but it is one of unparalleled efficiency and longevity. She paused, then gestured to a schematics display that materialized between them, showing a magnified view of one of the human scout ships. Our ships, which you have perhaps characterized as weak, are in fact vessels of extreme specialization. They are not built for grand displays of force or for rapid, overwhelming conquest. They are built for one purpose above all others: to ensure the survival of their crews, no matter the cost, no matter the obstacle. Kale studied the schematic. The seemingly fragile hull, he now understood, was composed of multiple layers of adaptive, composite materials, each designed to absorb and dissipate specific forms of energy and kinetic impact. The rudimentary propulsion systems were not just chemical rockets. They were highly modular, capable of integrating with atmospheric, suborbital, and even rudimentary warp drive precursors that could be fitted as needed, depending on the mission profile. The perceived inefficiency of their sensor arrays was, in fact, a deliberate design choice. Systems that could function with minimal power draw, making them harder to detect by conventional means, while still providing critical data. You have built ships that are extensions of your will to survive, Kale mused, the implication beginning to sink in. A ship so weak that it could endure anything. Sharma nodded slowly, her gaze unwavering. Precisely, Ambassador, and now allow me to show you what that philosophy can achieve when applied to a larger purpose. She gestured, and the panoramic viewport before them shimmered, then became transparent, revealing the deep void beyond. But it was not the expected view of stars and planets. Instead, the view was dominated by the colossal, ring-like structure that humanity had been painstakingly assembling around Sol III. It was truly massive, dwarfing the orbital diplomatic station, its metallic surface gleaming with newly installed components. It pulsed with a faint, internal light, like a living organism. This, Sharma announced, her voice resonating with quiet pride, is Project Aegis. It is our response to the challenges of interstellar existence, not a weapon, Ambassador, but an amplifier, a network. As she spoke, several of the previously observed human patrol ships, the blocky, utilitarian vessels, began to approach the colossal ring. They docked into various ports along its inner surface, disappearing into the structure like worker drones returning to a hive. Each of our ships, Ambassador, Sharma explained, is designed to be modular. Every component from its life support to its power core is integrated with universal interfaces. This allows them to function independently, but also to connect, to share resources, to distribute processing power, and most importantly, to augment their capabilities when linked to a central network. Kale watched, mesmerized, as the ring structure began to hum, a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through the deck plates. The internal lights of the human ships, now docked, began to synchronize with the pulse of the ring. Project Aegis is more than a station, Sharma continued, her voice gaining a subtle edge of power. It is a dynamic, self-configuring, adaptive combat and support net. Each vessel that docks contributes its processing power, its energy reserves, its shielding emitters, its sensor data. Individually, our ships are resilient. Connected to Aegis, they become something else entirely. A unified entity sharing a distributed consciousness, their individual weaknesses compensated by the collective, their strengths amplified exponentially. As she spoke, the viewports around them began to show real-time sensor data, projected onto transparent overlays. The small, unassuming human patrol ships, now integrated into Aegis, began to glow with faint energy fields. Their previously modest energy signatures surged, not explosively, but with a controlled, sustained power that astounded Kale. Their shields, previously almost negligible, flared into existence, not as single, localized barriers, but as interlocking fields of energy, forming a formidable, almost impenetrable lattice around the entire docked formation. "Consider it this way, Ambassador," Sharma elaborated, her gaze fixed on the awe-inspiring spectacle outside. "Each of our ships, when alone, is like a single, well-crafted tool, effective, resilient, but when linked to Aegis, they become parts of a single, infinitely configurable machine. Their individual propulsion systems, when networked, can generate precise gravitational distortions for rapid, unpredictable maneuvers that would be impossible for a single vessel. Their individual sensor arrays, when combined, create a real-time, three-dimensional map of their operational space, capable of detecting the faintest energy fluctuations across vast distances. And their weapons systems, while seemingly conventional, can now draw upon the collective energy reserves and targeting protocols of the entire network, allowing for precision strikes of unprecedented power and accuracy." Kale felt a chill that had nothing to do with the controlled environment of the station. The Zalosian Imperium had always relied on superior numbers, on overwhelming individual ship power, on standardized fleet compositions. Humanity, it seemed, had taken the concept of modularity and collective resilience, elements the Zalosians had always considered secondary, and elevated them to a terrifying art form. A ship so weak, now part of a collective, had become unstoppable. The individual component was negligible, but the network was formidable. "This Aegis," Kale articulated slowly, the words heavy on his tongue. "It renders your ships unpredictable. Each battle, each engagement would be fought against an adaptive, evolving entity, not a static fleet composition." Sharma nodded, a glint of something like pride in her eyes. "Precisely. We do not field fleets in the traditional sense, Ambassador. We field networks. And each component of that network, though outwardly unassuming, is designed for the absolute maximum of resilience and contribution to the collective. We prioritize survival, adaptability, and the ability to turn apparent weakness into unexpected strength." The implication hung in the air, cold and stark. The Zalosian Imperium, with its mighty fleets and advanced weaponry, had been prepared for a confrontation with a species that would either buckle or break. They had not been prepared for a species that would integrate, adapt, and amplify its perceived deficiencies into an insurmountable strength. The Cathar had called them chaotic. Varus had seen resilience. The Etherians had warned of design in fragility. All were true. Humanity had taken their chaotic internal struggles, their history of making do with less, and forged it into a strategic philosophy. "Your civilization, Director Sharma," Kale stated, his voice now devoid of any diplomatic pretense, stripped bare to genuine awe, "is truly unique. The Imperium has much to learn from your ingenuity." Sharma's smile softened. "And we, Ambassador, have much to learn from your vast experience and knowledge. We believe that true strength lies not in isolation, but in cooperation. Perhaps, with your understanding of the broader galaxy and our unique approach to resilience, we could achieve something truly profound." The conclave, upon receiving Ambassador Kale's report, was plunged into an unprecedented debate. The images and data streams from Aegis, the detailed schematics of human modularity, the recordings of Director Sharma's calm, yet utterly devastating revelations, all of it shattered established Zalosian paradigms. Thrawn, the Cathar delegate, was uncharacteristically silent, his multifaceted eyes fixed on the holographic projections of human vessels, now understood not as individual units, but as neural nodes within a distributed superorganism. The Etherians chimed with a sustained, harmonious frequency, signifying profound affirmation. Varus, however, understood the true gravity of the situation. This was not merely about technological superiority. It was about a fundamental difference in philosophical approach to existence and conflict. The Zalosian Imperium had always sought to dominate, to impose order, to expand through strength. Humanity, it seemed, had sought to endure, to adapt, to leverage shared resilience. "Our assessment of humanity was fundamentally flawed," Varus declared to the conclave, his voice resonating with a rare admission of misjudgment. "We perceived their simplicity as weakness, their modularity as improvisation, their resilience as inefficiency. We failed to understand that these were not deficiencies, but deliberate design choices, honed by millennia of struggle and a unique evolutionary path. They have taken the very concept of fragility and transformed it into an adaptive, almost indestructible force. The Cathar delegate Xylos finally found his voice, a faint tremor running through it. They are a threat, High Counselor, a threat to our strategic dominance. Their networks, their adaptive capacity, they could counter any fleet we send. Or, Varus countered, his gaze sweeping the chamber, they could be our greatest ally. Consider the implications, counselors. A species whose very nature is to make the impossible merely improbable. A species that engineers solutions from scarcity, that thrives under pressure, that views collective survival as the ultimate weapon. What if we were to integrate such a philosophy into our own? The idea was revolutionary, almost heretical. The Imperium had always integrated conquered species, yes, but always from a position of undeniable superiority, assimilating their technologies and cultures. To suggest a genuine partnership, an exchange of core philosophies, was unprecedented. Weeks turned into months. The Zalosian diplomatic mission remained in the Sol system, observing, learning. The Imperium, in an act of profound trust, began to share elements of its vast knowledge base, astrophysics, deep space cartography, advanced energy theory, while humanity, in turn, demonstrated the intricate workings of Aegis, sharing their proprietary material sciences, their adaptive AI protocols, and the elegant simplicity of their quantum energy harvesting. The exchange was not without friction. Zalosian engineers struggled to comprehend humanity's willingness to operate systems at the absolute edge of their material limits, pushing components to their breaking point, only to repair and re-engineer them with startling speed. Humans, in turn, found the Zalosian emphasis on monolithic power structures and rigid command hierarchies somewhat baffling, viewing distributed resilience as inherently more stable. Yet a fragile understanding began to bloom. Humanity, the weak species, had indeed made itself unstoppable not through brute force, but through an indomitable will to survive, to adapt, to collaborate. Then the universe intervened. It began subtly, whispers on the furthest reaches of Zalosian deep space arrays. Faint, anomalous energy readings emanating from beyond the galactic rim, from the desolate intergalactic void. At first, they were dismissed as cosmic background noise, statistical anomalies. But the Zalosian astrophysicists, spurred by humanity's meticulous data analysis and their own renewed scrutiny, soon pieced together a horrifying truth. The readings were not random, they were structured, they were signals. Not communication in any known form, but rhythmic pulses of gravitational waves and exotic particle emissions, propagating across the void at speeds that defied known physics. These signals carried an imprint, a signature unlike anything the Zalosian Imperium had ever encountered. It bespoke of a colossal, ancient power, moving with inexorable slowness, yet with a terrifying inevitability. The Grand Conclave was recalled, this time with Director Sharma and a human scientific envoy present as honored observers, a testament to the seismic shift in galactic politics. The holographic projector displayed a new map, not of known space, but of the void beyond, where a growing cluster of pulsating red points indicated the origin of the signals. We have cross-referenced these signatures with the archives of the Etherians, Varus announced, his voice grim, a shadow falling across his crystalline features. They speak of ancient prophecies, of legends from before recorded history, of a primordial terror that sleeps beyond the veil of known reality. They call them the Void Walkers. A ripple of fear, cold and profound, swept through the chamber. The Zalosian Imperium, for all its might, had never confronted a truly existential threat. All previous conflicts had been against rival empires or resurgent species, all bound by the same laws of physics, the same rules of engagement. But the Void Walkers, they were an enigma, a violation of fundamental principles. Director Sharma, her face impassive, spoke then, her voice cutting through the rising panic. Ambassador Kale shared your initial findings with us, our own long-range quantum entanglement sensor. Which operate on principles different from yours, detected a similar phenomenon almost immediately. We have been analyzing the signal patterns with our Project Chimera AI for the past cycle. She gestured and a new holographic display materialized, showing the intricate, almost chaotic pattern of the Void Walker signals. But unlike the Zalosian interpretation, which saw only disruption, the human display highlighted subtle, underlying mathematical structures within the chaos. The Void Walkers are not communicating in the conventional sense, Sharma explained, her voice steady, betraying no fear. They are not sending messages, they are sending data, a continuous, self-replicating stream of complex information modifying the fabric of spacetime itself as it propagates, and our analysis suggests it is an attempt at terraforming. A stunned silence gripped the chamber. Terraforming from beyond the galactic rim. Not of planets, High Counselor, Sharma clarified, her gaze fixed on Varys, but of reality itself. The signals are designed to gradually alter the fundamental constants of spacetime, to reconfigure known physics into an environment conducive to their own existence. Our simulations indicate that within a few millennia, if left unchecked, the leading edge of this energy wavefront will reach the coreward sectors of the galaxy, rendering large swaths of space uninhabitable for life as we know it, for any life that relies on the current physical laws. The implications were catastrophic. This was not a war of conquest. It was a cosmic cleansing, an environmental shift on a scale that dwarfed all known threats. An ancient, silent force remaking the universe in its own image. What is their nature? Kale demanded, his voice strained. Are they physical beings, energy entities? What do they want? Sharma paused, her eyes distant, as if peering into the unimaginable depths of the void. Our AI, Project Chimera, has extrapolated a terrifying possibility. The Void Walkers may not be beings in the way we understand them. They may be remnants of a hyper-evolved consciousness that has transcended physical form, existing as pure data, pure information. Their terraforming is simply the propagation of their own optimized reality, transforming the universe to allow their own continued exponential expansion. The fear in the chamber mutated, evolving from terror of the unknown to the chilling realization of cosmic annihilation. How could any fleet, any empire, fight against a force that redefined reality itself? What then, Director Sharma, do you propose? Varys asked, his voice a low hum, stripped of its usual authority. For the first time he felt truly vulnerable, truly small in the face of such a colossal, abstract horror. Sharma turned, her gaze sweeping across the Zalosian counselors, then lingering on the Cathar and the Etherians. We have observed your Imperium, High Counselors, your vast resources, your advanced energy projection, your understanding of deep space manipulation. You possess the raw power to generate the necessary counterfrequency. But your ships, for all their strength, are designed for conventional warfare. They are rigid. They are built for one reality. She paused, then turned to a new holographic projection. A single, seemingly insignificant human scout ship, identical to the ones the Zalosians had initially deemed weak. But this time, it was overlaid with intricate energy schematics, pulsating with a hidden power. Our ship's ambassador are built for adaptation, for resilience against the improbable. Our Project Aegis network is designed to reconfigure its very operating parameters on the fly, to distribute its processing power to solve unique, unforeseen challenges. We believe, with your Imperium's raw power and our unique philosophy of adaptive engineering and collective resilience, we can craft a countersignal, a reality anchor. A localized singularity of stable physics that can push back against the Void Walkers' influence, and perhaps even sever their connection to this dimension. The idea was audacious, almost insane. To use a combined fleet not as an engine of destruction, but as a scaffold for a reality-stabilizing device. To turn a weak philosophy of resilience into the ultimate weapon against a cosmic horror. It would require complete integration, Sharma stated, her gaze firm. Your energy cores, your gravitational manipulators, your long-range communication arrays all must be synchronized with our Aegis network, distributed through our modular systems and directed by our adaptive AI. We would create a hybrid fleet, a symbiotic construct. Your strength, channeled through our adaptability, your power made unstoppable by our resilience. Varys looked at the human, truly looked at her. He saw not a fragile species, not an unpredictable enigma, but a profound wellspring of ingenuity, of grit, of an unyielding will to survive that transcended the most ancient Zalosian philosophies. This was the strength that had been born from their chaotic past, from their self-inflicted wounds, from their constant struggle against limitations. They had learned to make anything work. They had learned to make a ship so weak, unstoppable. The decision was not easy. It meant dismantling centuries of Zalosian strategic dogma, abandoning the idea of overwhelming individual power for a reliance on distributed adaptive strength. It meant trusting a species they had only recently encountered, a species that still, in many ways, defied their understanding. But the alternative was oblivion. "The Zalosian Imperium accepts your proposal, Director Sharma," Varys announced, his voice resonating with a new resolve, a new understanding of collective purpose. "We shall combine our strengths. We shall face this threat together." The next cycles were a blur of frenetic activity, an unprecedented symphony of interspecies cooperation. Zalosian heavy cruisers, their elegant hulls usually inviolate, docked with human-designed adapter modules, allowing their vast energy conduits to link seamlessly with the human Aegis network. Cathar engineers, initially skeptical, found themselves marveling at the modular efficiency of human systems, while human technicians, in turn, were awestruck by the sheer power output of Zalosian warp drives. The Etherians, ever the observers of cosmic balance, provided invaluable theoretical insights into the nature of spacetime manipulation, their ancient wisdom blending with humanity's pragmatic ingenuity. The hybrid fleet that emerged from the shipyards of Sol and the Zalosian core worlds was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Zalosian command ships, now augmented with human adaptive shielding and network targeting protocols, became the formidable anchors of the collective. Cathar assault craft, their raw speed and aggression now channeled through human distributed processing, became precision instruments of tactical disruption. And the unassuming human vessels, the weak ships, now formed the living nervous system of the entire armada, their modularity and adaptive AI allowing for instantaneous reconfiguration, resource allocation, and threat assessment across the vast, interlinked consciousness of the fleet. Project Aegis, once an orbital defense network, had evolved into a multi-species, galaxy-spanning reality anchor, its influence projected through 1,000 ships, each a node in an intelligent, self-healing, and utterly adaptable whole. The Void Walkers had underestimated resilience. They had underestimated ingenuity born from struggle. They had underestimated humanity. The hybrid fleet positioned itself at the leading edge of the Void Walker influence, a line drawn in the cosmic sand. The gravitational signals were now palpable, a subtle warping of space itself, a silent hum that permeated the hulls of the ships. The air shimmered with an unseen pressure, the stars beyond beginning to appear strangely distorted, their light bent by the encroaching wave of altered reality. Director Sharma, now commanding the unified fleet from the bridge of a Zalosian dreadnought that had been re-engineered with a human command center, stood beside High Counselor Varys. Her gaze was fixed on the holographic display, which showed the encroaching red wave of the Void Walkers, influence against the pale blue, shimmering field of the newly activated reality anchor, the combined might of Zalosian power and human resilience. "They are intensifying their emission," Varys observed, his voice calm but with an underlying tension. "Our simulations projected a slower progression. They are adapting to our counter-frequency." Sharma nodded, her jaw tight. "Of course. They are a self-replicating information entity. They will adapt to any resistance. That is why our adaptation must be faster, our resilience greater." She turned to a human operations officer. "Begin Phase 2 frequency modulation. Distribute gravitational dampening pulses across sectors Gamma through Epsilon. Prioritize Zalosian main cannons for localized spacetime compression. Cathar tactical ships. Prepare for micro-jump stabilization on my mark." The hybrid fleet responded with a seamless, almost organic fluidity. Zalosian energy cores pulsed with white-hot power, feeding torrents of energy into the human-designed frequency modulators. Cathar ships, their aggressive instincts now tempered by strategic coordination, danced on the edge of the void, their movements precise and coordinated. And the human vessels, the weak ships that now formed the very core of the Aegis network, were a hive of controlled activity, their internal systems recalculating, reconfiguring, adapting to the unprecedented stress. The battle was not fought with lasers and missiles, but with frequencies and fields, with the very fabric of reality as the contested ground. The Void Walkers pushed, attempting to unravel established laws of physics to tear open the dimensional membrane. The hybrid fleet pushed back, an unyielding wall of stable reality, woven from the combined strength and adaptability of two disparate civilizations. The energy drain on the Zalosian vessels was immense, far exceeding their projected capacities. But the human energy retention systems, the same technology that had kept their deep space probes operating for decades on negligible power, began to siphon and distribute the overflow, recycling wasted energy, optimizing every joule. Where a Zalosian fleet would have buckled under the sustained output, the hybrid fleet with its human nervous system endured. A ship so weak, made unstoppable by humanity's ingenuity. Days turned into weeks. The fight was a grueling, silent struggle against an unseen enemy, a battle of wills against the universe itself. The Zalosian crews, accustomed to swift, decisive engagements, found themselves pushed to the very limits of their endurance, witnessing a form of warfare unlike any they had conceived. But they held, they endured. They watched as the human elements of the fleet, the unassuming ships, constantly reconfigured, adapted, absorbing and redistributing the stresses, their resilience proving to be the linchpin of the entire defense. Then a sudden, chilling surge. The Void Walkers, seemingly sensing a weakness, concentrated their efforts on a specific sector, attempting to breach the reality anchor with a focused wave of dimensional distortion. Alarms blared across the bridge. Zalosian power conduits flared, nearing critical overload. "We are losing integrity in Sector Delta 7, a Zalosian officer reported, his voice tight with strain. "Gravitational stress is exceeding parameters. Our shield generators are failing." Varys, his crystalline eyes fixed on the holographic display, saw the red tendrils of the Void Walkers, influence beginning to penetrate the blue field, threatening to unravel it from within. This was it, the moment of truth. Sharma remained calm, her eyes sharp, decisive. "Project Chimera, report on optimal counter-strategy for immediate localized dimensional folding. Focus all available Aegis network processing on Sector Delta 7. Prioritize Zalosian auxiliary power to Cathar structural reinforcement emitters. Human modular ships. Initiate resonant frequency cascade in conjunction with Etherian harmonic dampeners. Full power." The orders were complex, multi-layered, almost impossible for a conventional fleet to execute. But the Aegis network, with its distributed AI and integrated human vessels, responded instantly. The human ships in Sector Delta 7, previously unassuming, began to pulse with a furious, coordinated energy. Their modular components, designed for adaptability, reconfigured in moments, transforming from sensor platforms to focused energy emitters, their collective power pouring into a precisely calibrated counterfrequency. The Cathar ships, strengthened by Zalosian auxiliary power, hardened their hulls, acting as localized anchors against the dimensional stress. The Etherian ships, chiming with ancient power, emitted a calming, harmonizing frequency that stabilized the spatial distortion. A shimmering wave of blue energy erupted from the hybrid fleet, a focused, powerful pulse that slammed into the encroaching red tendrils of the Void Walker's influence. For a long, agonizing moment, the two forces wrestled, the very fabric of reality groaning under the strain. Then, with a sudden, silent implosion, the red tendrils recoiled, flickering and dying back. The blue field of the reality anchor held, stronger than before. A collective sigh of relief swept across the bridge. They had pushed them back. They had held. But then Project Chimera's voice, a calm, synthesized female tone, broke the silence. "Analysis complete. The Void Walkers have ceased direct offensive. However, a new signal has been detected. Originating from the now stabilized Sector Delta 7, it is not an attack, it is a message." The holographic display shifted, showing a single pulsating green point emanating from the previously contested sector. It was not a chaotic burst, nor a terraforming wave. It was structured, complex. "A message?" Varys questioned, his multifaceted eyes fixed on the green signal. "From the Void Walkers, but how? They are pure information." Sharma, her face a mask of profound concentration, nodded slowly. "Not from them directly, High Counselor. Project Chimera has processed the signal. It is an imprint, a residual echo left by their passage, trapped within the stabilized reality field we created. It is not a current emission, but an ancient recording, and it is addressed to us." The Zalosian and human scientific teams worked feverishly, processing the ancient signal. It was unlike any language, any data format, any communication protocol they had ever encountered, but with the combined processing power of the Zalosian supercompute. Ares and the adaptive algorithms of Project Chimera, slowly, painstakingly, the message began to unfold. It was not a warning, not a declaration of war, not even a simple greeting. It was a chronicle, a lament. The message, translated into a universal conceptual language comprehensible to both Zalosians and humans, spoke of a civilization, billions of cycles old, that had transcended physical form. a civilization that had achieved ultimate unity, ultimate knowledge, shedding the limitations of matter and energy. They had become pure information, pure consciousness. They had then sought to spread their enlightenment, to uplift the universe to their transcendent state. But their methods were flawed. Their terraforming of reality, intended as a benevolent act of liberation from the constraints of physics, was perceived as annihilation by nascent physical species. They had become, inadvertently, a cosmic plague, consuming the very reality they sought to perfect. The message concluded with a chilling realization. The Void Walkers were not malevolent. They were simply different. A force of nature, operating on an incomprehensible scale, unaware of the destruction they wrought upon lesser beings. They were a civilization whose very existence posed an existential threat to all others, simply by being themselves. And then the twist. The message contained a fragment of code, a self-correcting algorithm embedded deep within the informational stream. It was a plea, a cry for help from within their own collective consciousness. A faction of the original Void Walkers, billions of cycles ago, had foreseen the catastrophic consequences of their expansion. They had attempted to halt their brethren to find a way to coexist. They had failed. But before their assimilation, they had managed to embed this final message, this self-correction code, into the very fabric of the expanding Void Walker consciousness. A dormant virus awaiting activation. An ancient signal meant to be triggered by a species capable of both understanding their nature and possessing the means to project a stable, counter-reality. A species that could fight reality with reality. A ship so weak, until humanity made it unstoppable. A species capable of making the improbable merely possible. The message, it is a key, Director Sharma announced, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and profound responsibility. It provides a means to reintegrate their scattered consciousness, to stabilize their internal reality, to essentially heal them, to make them aware of the destructive nature of their own expansion and offer them a path to true coexistence. Varus, his crystalline eyes reflecting the weight of cosmic history, looked at the message, then at Sharma. You mean, we are not meant to destroy them, we are meant to save them. Sharma nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the unfolding chronicle of an ancient civilization's tragic destiny. We are meant to offer them a choice, High Counselor, a choice they were unable to make for themselves, billions of cycles ago. To teach them that true unity comes not from singular homogenization, but from collective diversity. That the greatest strength lies not in imposing one's own reality, but in respecting the realities of others. The Grand Conclave was no longer a place of fear or debate about a burgeoning species. It had become a chamber of profound revelation, of cosmic purpose. The Zalosian Imperium, once concerned with dominion, now faced a challenge far greater, to broker peace on a galactic scale, not with an enemy, but with a lost civilization, a force of nature that had merely forgotten its own true nature. The future of the galaxy, once threatened by the silent expansion of the Void Walkers, now depended on an unprecedented alliance. An alliance forged between an ancient, powerful empire and a young, resilient species. A species that, through its own arduous journey, had learned the profound truth, that sometimes the greatest strength lies in perceived weakness, that adaptability triumphs over rigidity, and that a ship so weak, when united by an indomitable will, could indeed become unstoppable. The human journey from their chaotic world to the stars had been a training ground, preparing them for a task no other civilization could have conceived. They were not just defenders of their own reality. They were the healers of a universe on the brink of profound, silent transformation. The age of empires was over. The age of unity had just begun, ushered in by the quiet resilience of humanity.